Alright, the next couple of examples that we're going to look at is still going to be that indeterminate form, but how do I fix the problem? Like the two I just finished, we were able to fix that problem by doing some factoring. This is where you're going to have to rationalize the numerator that I had mentioned. Okay, if you directly substitute in the 3, of course 3 plus 1 is going to give us 4, square root of 4 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 0, and then 3 minus 3 on the bottom is 0. I mean, always try direct substitution. If you get 0 over 0, now you know what to do, okay? Now, this is called rationalizing the numerator because your radical's on the top instead of on the bottom, which is just reverse of what you're used to. But like I said, you fix the problem the same way. What you're going to have to do is multiply by the conjugate. Let me just write this here beside it. So I'm going to multiply by the conjugate of my numerator. And if you remember, conjugate means you just change the sign in the middle. So I'm going to have the square root of x plus 1 plus 2. So I'm going to have to multiply top and bottom by that. Okay, now remember, you got to keep writing your limit notation with each of these steps. Okay. So just ignore this 0 over 0 here now. Let me just mark it out. So this is going to require FOIL method because this is 2 terms times 2 terms. So we'll start with the square root times the square root. So since those are the same, the square root times the square root is just going to give me what's underneath it. Now I've got to do the square root times 2. And now negative 2 times the square root. And then negative 2 times negative 2. Now, on the bottom, don't actually multiply this out. You've got x minus 3 times the square root of x plus 1 plus 2. So you're actually only going to want to multiply out the top. Just don't bother with the multiplying out the bottom. It's going to work out the way it needs to. Okay, I've got some like terms. First of all, these 2 terms are going to add out, and that's what you're wanting to happen. You're wanting those to add out, and I've got the x, and 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Okay, so now what's going to happen is your x minus 3's are going to cancel out. So that just leaves you with an understood 1 on the top. And now the square root of x plus 1 plus 2. Okay, so we've done everything that we can do. So hopefully you're at a point now that you can do the direct substitution. So that's going to be our next step. Okay, so I'm plugging in 3. So that's square root of 4, which is 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4. So that means your limit is 1/4. Okay, here's this another one. Let's do another one like that. That's not something you're used to having to do too much of. Okay. If you plug in 0, trust me, you're going to get the 0 over 0. You're going to get the indeterminate form. Alright, so going through the rationalizing. And you're rationalizing the numerator, so it's the conjugate of this, which means just change this. So if this is a plus, change it to a minus. If it's a minus, change it to a plus. You multiply top and bottom by the same thing. Alright, so with your numerators, you're going to need to FOIL this out. So the square root times the square root, remember, just gives you what's underneath it. Now, with the square root of 2 plus x times the square root of 2, just leave it as square root 2. I mean, just leave them side by side. I mean, I could actually write that another way, but you're just going to end up doing more work than what you have to. So just write them side by side. I mean, that's understood to be multiplication. But now I've got the negative times the positive, so that'll be a minus square root 2 square root of 2 plus x. And then a negative square root 2 times a positive square root 2 would just be a negative 2. Now remember what I told you about the bottom. Don't multiply out the bottom. Alright, simplifying my numerator. These two are going to add out. That's why I said don't bother trying to do any, like, write that in any other way. They're going to add out regardless. Okay. Now you actually also get your constants to add out. The 2's are going to add out. So that leaves you with an x on the top. And then your x's are going to cancel. And now you should be ready to do the direct substitution. Okay, so that's going to give me 1 over square root 2 plus square root 2. And that would then give me 2 square root 2. So you would be allowed to add those since the number underneath is the same. And of course the 2 that's out front is because there's an understood 1 there, understood 1 there. Okay. Now one thing I know with these problems, sometimes you're like, I don't know how far am I supposed to go. When do I get to stop and do the direct substitution? Okay. If you stop and try direct substitution too early, you'll still get the 0 over 0. And that'll let you know, hey, there's some more steps I've got to go here before I can do the direct substitution.